Sometimes the only way to move forward is through addition by subtraction, and that's perfectly okay. Having a talented star player in the NBA doesn't always translate to team success, and sometimes the timeline that the player is on doesn't match up with the timeline that the team is on. Other times, the fit between the two don't work. Other times, on top of that, the change is just a risk worth taking, and everything in between can also account to it as well. That brings us to today's video, where we will be talking about 4 star players in particular that desperately need to be traded this season for either the good of themselves, the good of the team that they're currently on, or maybe even both. Before we start though, it turns out a good amount of you watching right now aren't even subscribed to the channel, so if you enjoy the content, consider hitting the subscribe button, as not only does it help out a ton, but I'd also very much appreciate it. Now with that being said, let's begin. The first star player in desperate need of a change of scenery this season is Trae Young of the Atlanta Hawks. Trae Young was on top of the world in 2021 when he surprisingly led his Hawks squad to the conference finals, but after that the organization miscalculated their next moves, attempting to go all in, and things have progressively gotten worse ever since. DeJounte Murray was just not a good fit for what they needed to take things to the next level, and after landing in the play-in tournament in each of the last 3 seasons without making it out of the first round a single time, they admitted defeat and traded Murray to the Pelicans this summer. The team also surprisingly landed the #1 overall pick in the draft this summer and used it to select Zachary Risache, which would usually be a good time for a team to shift towards a rebuild if their current core isn't taking the strides forward that they want. But the Hawks didn't do that, and now they're setting themselves up for a season with a pretty mediocre best case scenario. Trae Young is in the prime of his career, and even though he definitely has weaknesses of his own, primarily on the defensive side of things, where he has been admittedly one of the worst perimeter defenders in the whole league, he has still proven on countless occasions that his offensive brilliance as a crafty ball handler, quick decision maker, incredible passer, and 3-level scorer with deep shooting range can bolster any offense he's a part of. There are quite a few teams in the playoff hunt in desperate need of an elite playmaker to take their offense to the next level, and if or when the Hawks start the season slowly, the Trey Young trade rumors should inevitably start to heat up. The next star player that desperately needs to be traded this season is Jimmy Butler of the Miami Heat. Butler's inclusion on this list may come as a bit of a surprise to some of you, but the writing is on the wall regarding a rift between Butler and the organization, and there's a lot that has gone into what I believe is the beginning of the end. Butler's time in Miami has without a doubt been highly successful, as he led the group to 3 conference finals and 2 trips to the NBA finals, but at the heart of those runs was Jimmy leveling up, performing at a Hall of Fame all-time great type level for stretches, and it has felt like the game plan for the Heat over the last few years has just been to bank on him being able to do that all the time. For 2 off seasons in a row now, the Heat have been dead silent, not making any notable splashes, with last summer being the time where they notoriously were in the lead to land Damian Lillard until the Bucks swooped in and took him because the Heat were playing hardball in their negotiations, and this summer their biggest acquisition was Alec Burks. The biggest move they've made in that span has been trading for Terry Rozier last season, whose skill set clashed with Tyler Herro's as they're very similar, and they didn't end up getting much of a boost from him anyway, so now for a 3rd straight season, the Heat are entering the year with a core that seems to be maxed out as either a play-in team or a lower-seeded playoff team anyway. Butler is 35 years old now, so it may be unrealistic to expect all-time highs that he gave them in the past, and with the complacency of the front office that they've shown as of late, if the team falls behind in the standings early, Butler is only going to get louder and louder about his frustration, as we have literally seen from him a few times in his career already. He and the Heat president Pat Riley already butted heads a few times in the last couple months. Reports are saying that the team is very hesitant to give him a contract extension, and all of this could add up to a trade request going down in the near future. The next star player in desperate need of a change of scenery is Brandon Ingram of the New Orleans Pelicans. Ingram's situation in New Orleans has been reviewed quite a bit this summer because he entered the period as a prime trade candidate, but nothing ever came from it. Ingram's season last year left his future very much up in the air because he had his worst season since his arrival in New Orleans, and it ended with him struggling mightily in their first-round playoff series. He only has 1 year left on his current contract too, so the fact that there weren't really any substantial contract extension discussions between him and the Pelicans this summer, all signs seem to be pointing to a split coming in the near future. Zion Williamson, CJ McCollum, and now DeJounte Murray are all on pretty hefty contracts already with the team, and they also know that their emerging two-way wing player Trey Murphy is going to demand a pretty big contract extension next summer as well, so realistically, it's for the best for the Pelicans to part ways with Ingram as soon as possible so they don't lose him for no return in free agency next summer, since he's not a part of their long-term plans. Ingram is a former All-Star, still young enough to be confident in bouncing back to his borderline All-Star level, but figuring out a fair asking price for him with all of that other context has proved to be a difficult task. A former All-Star coming off of an injury-riddled down year with just 1 year left on their current contract will always result in weaker trade offers, but the Pelicans don't have the leverage to demand a bigger return. Wing scoring is always in high demand though, especially around the trade deadline, so I think we will eventually see a deal get done. I'm just not sure what the Pelicans will end up getting in return. And finally, the last star player that desperately needs to be traded this season is Zach LaVine of the Chicago Bulls. LaVine's predicament has a lot of similarities to Brandon Ingram's situation in terms of the individual production, the injuries, and the fit. The main difference between the two is the goals of the team that they're currently on though. The Bulls are a squad that really just need to embrace a rebuild at this point, but only have ever dipped their toes into that side of things. They traded away DeMar DeRozan this offseason, signifying that they knew their current core wasn't good enough, so many expected LaVine to be the next one out the door, but he's a much more complicated asset to move. For one, LaVine is coming off of a highly inefficient season where he put up fewer than 20 points per game for the first time since 2018. Second, he's coming off of an injury that held him out of most of the season, so his health concerns are also scaring away potential suitors. And third, he still has 3 years left on his current contract, being paid about $137 million in that span, and that kind of albatross deal just doesn't fit into many teams' payrolls, nor do teams want to pay a player whose best days may be behind them that much. Still though, LaVine is a prime candidate to potentially have a bounce-back season if fully healthy, and he could absolutely play his trade value back up to where it was at a reasonable price for the Bulls to eventually move him if he has a good start to the season. As the season goes on, there are always teams that end up in search of a scoring boost, and LaVine at his best is a dynamic 3-level scorer, so with everything going on, I would definitely keep an eye on him around the trade deadline. And with that being said, that's all I have for you today. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below which teams you think should trade for these star players during the season. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.